I thought it would be fun to start my own business and be on my own and be just responsible. No, now I'm having the most fun is because we have really good business people behind us. They're opening doors that I could never open by myself, and we're all running at 100% right now.
Welcome to the Schmidt List, the podcast for people dedicated to managing successful projects, developing impactful products, and building engaged teams. And now, here's your host, Kurt Schmidt.
Cale, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, living the dream. Thanks for coming on the show. I know you're busy. Yeah. You're constantly flying all over the country with doing business with ClickSWITCH. And
yeah,
it's a lot of fun. So let's hear a little bit about Cale's story. Where did the idea for ClickSWITCH come from? Were you sitting at home and you were like, gosh, if this account stuff is so crappy, I'm going to solve this problem for everyone.
Yeah, I've had a lot of ideas, and usually I run them by my wife, and she's like, no, that's stupid.
Don't do
but
that.
ClickSWITCH was one that she's like, that's actually a really good idea.
Okay.
So I was in more of a SaaS model. We were selling software to banks, and I was meeting with all these banks trying to get a different product out to market. And then that's when I started just really listening to the clients, figuring out what are you missing. And there was just a fundamental issue where it came to onboarding new customers, where people were opening checking accounts, but they weren't getting switched over. So banks were kind of facing this time where they were opening all these accounts, and the accounts were just costing the banks money because they couldn't get customers switched over. And so we kind of looked at it as, if we can help a customer switch over their recurring payments and direct deposits, like as soon as the account's open, we can deliver a profitable checking account to the bank. And so that's where phase one started, with trying to build out a user interface and all the back end database that went along with it. But it was a long road. And kind of what we did is we just built a demo site, and I got a demo site and I started taking it to some banks that we knew, and they were like, I think you're onto something, but can you put a button here? Can you change a color scheme here? And really let the banks drive the user experience to begin with. And then it was like, okay, now we need to monetize it. We need to figure out a way to make money.
Right.
And then from the journey really went from, I started it in 2014 to really 2015 is when we started to monetize the product. So it took us about 12 months to get going. But then all of a sudden we signed, from 2015 to 2018, we signed about 300 financial institutions. Now, I just made that journey sound really easy. There's a lot of...
I was going to say, it's just like magic.
Yeah, it was really simple.
Well, and again, it seems like such an obvious problem, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it's like... somebody would have always, again, I'm guessing you get this a lot, where people are like, how has not somebody else not solved this problem?
People have tried it. They've just kind of been unsuccessful with the launch. And we were touching on it before, but, I wasn't in a position where I could try to roll something out. And if it didn't work, I had something to fall back on. I had nothing to fall back on. So we actually rolled version 1.0 out, and, there was issues with it.
Sure.
But it wasn't like I could just say, okay, I tried and I'm done.
Yep.
It was like, you really need to figure out what the issues are and fix it, and then get it back out to market. So there was some trial and error, but it was because we had nothing else to fall back on. This was the product's the company. ClickSWITCH is the product, and ClickSWITCH is the company. It's our only product. So we have to make sure it works really well. And that was, one of the things that drove us to make sure it was successful, because it was all we had.
Yeah. Well, and you look at these giant companies like Uber and Airbnb, and they're like disrupting taxis and hotels, but like the banking industry, like to go and be like, this will be, something that'll work out. That's such a highly regulated industry. How do you initially approach that with people? Because I'm guessing like the idea of, handing customers over, using air quotes, can be really scary for a financial institution, right?
It is. It takes a lot of people on your side too. Like when we were first trying to sell it, I would go into a bank and they would say, this is really cool. We want to move forward. Can you send us 3 references? And it's like, well, you would be our first client, And so it takes people to kind of go. Banks are very regulated, and typically, they have a checklist, so just go down it. Did you get this due diligence document? Did you get your references? Did you get their financials? Did you get, we kind of didn't have all that in the beginning. And so it took a couple banks to be like, okay, when you get it, you send it to us. And And I'm like, yeah, for sure. But now we're signing like top 10 banks, and we're much more in the process. But it took a few people to really believe in what we were doing in the beginning and say, all right, well, we're going to look past this because we believe in what you're doing. Yeah. And if you don't have that, if I didn't have that in the very beginning, I would have never got it going, just because of the industry that we were into. It was, the 3 references and not a client. That was a little tough to get around.
Yeah. Well, I can just imagine you when you get that first client that you can use as a reference, you're just walking out, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, yes.
It was like, thank you. Here's a gift card. You get, whatever you have to do. Is it, pricing discount? Is it, a gift card for your first X amount of switches, or, whatever we had to do to get creative to people to buy in and to get us out there. That was critical.
So in the beginning, it's just you, right, with this crazy idea, right? Yep. And then how did you build out that team initially? Were you like, did you go out and pitch friends, former coworkers? Like, how did you build that initial first ClickSWITCH team?
There was friends and family. Like, the guy who runs our East Coast sales is my brother. Okay. He lives out in New York, but he was actually working in athletics down in Texas. So he was connected to all these banks down there. And when I was building ClickSWITCH, he's like, I'll introduce you to a couple banks. We had a few really good meetings, and he's like, a week later, he quit his job and he came with me. I'm like, it's not always going to be this easy, but, I appreciate your belief.
Vote of confidence. Yeah. That's pretty good.
So it is, you really need to surround yourself with good people in the beginning, and you need to set boundaries at the same time, because it's a different, like when you're working with family or you're working with friends, we can act one way from 9 to 5 and we can act a different way after 5, but here's the boundaries how we're going to orchestrate in the beginning. And I think I still have a lot of good people around us, like people who were with me from the very beginning are still at the company, and they've just grown with the company. Like our CFO, he started off as just a controller, but he had the skill sets to grow as a CFO. And I believed in him, and we all just kind of take care of each other, and it's been worth it so far.
Yeah. So in terms of that scaling, like what were some of the biggest, opportunities or challenges early on as you started? It sounds like once you get these referrals in place, things start to snowball a little bit, right? Because you're checking the boxes, and so now it's starting to become a little bit more regular to onboard these banks and start to have that conversation. You probably got your pitch down really good, right? But now you got to you can't do everything by yourself anymore, right? So now you got to start growing and building that team. So what were some of the initial challenges you had, like with building that larger team, like outside of the friends and family? I
always felt, and I still do, our frontline sales is pretty easy, because it's easy what we do. Like our product is pretty simple. Like we help people switch their bank account. We transfer their direct deposits and automatic payments. It's not a 30-minute spiel to figure out what we do. It's pretty simple. So a bank can typically grasp that right away. But then we sell the bank, they sign, and then they go into an implementation, and then they go over to account management, and then they're just kind of like, well, I hope you're successful. Right. So that was the biggest thing for us to scale the business, is we need to build out
what's on the backside of that sale, right?
Yeah. So client services, account management, because our business model is B2B to C. So we sell software to banks, and then we hope banks introduce it to their customers as soon as they open the checking account. If the executive team bought off on the idea or the product, and it was kind of failure to communicate to maybe the bankers in the branch, nobody uses our product. Yeah. So we really had to figure out a way to get control of our product post-sale and make sure if a customer walks into a branch, they know the product exists. We're not relying on somebody else to introduce that. So we had to put, a pretty significant investment around our account management and client service team. And we struggled for a long time, because when you're starting off, you don't know how to onboard a bank. You don't know how to implement a bank. You don't know what the customer is going to think. Right. And so it was a lot of trial and error to figure out what we need to do to get the product from we sold it to customer adoption. Yeah.
And I think, again, I love that iterative approach that you talk about, because where I feel like so many people fail is they're trying to get it perfect. Yeah. They're trying to get it to a place where it's like, I can't show it to anybody, and I can't do it until I get it perfect. But it sounds like, what was going on inside of your head about, it sounded like you had to beat your head against the wall a lot. Yeah. But you must have just had this vision, like, this will work if we can just get past this next hurdle.
That's part of bootstrapping a company compared to having venture money right out of the gate. We had no cash in our bank account. So we needed to generate revenue. It wasn't like we could wait for this perfect product and we're going to hold off and then we're going to roll it out. It was, there was some trial and error. And so we had to figure out a way to monetize the product right from the beginning. And one of the ways we did that is when we were originally building it, a lot of these companies that are selling software to banks, they have really long implementation processes. Maybe it's 6 to 12 months. We couldn't do that. We needed a contract to be signed, and you could technically be live that day, just the way the bones of the software was built. And that allowed us to drive in that revenue because we could sign a bank and they could go live that same day because they could build their portal and we could get them out. It wasn't like we needed to rely on other core banking systems or whatever it took from an integration perspective. So we sold ClickSWITCH as a standalone to begin with, and that allowed us to monetize right away.
Yeah, I can see the more I hear you talking about it, that change management aspect that almost has to come with what you're doing, because sure, you get the sale and the executives are like, cool, go make us some more money. But somebody sitting at that bank is like, I don't need another job.
Right.
And your team must have to come in and really not only show them how to use it, but express the value that they get out of it, right? So there's got to be a whole narrative there, right?
It is. And the banks who use ClickSWITCH and they use it very well, their leadership is driving it. It's part of like a scorecard or an incentive program in the branch. Like you have to do 10 switches today in order to hit your bonus. And that's when we see it, because you do get the, oh, what's in it for me type of thing, which is normal, right?
Of course.
Yeah, but when I'm relying on that, we need to figure out a way to figure out, what is in it for them? Is it they hit 25 switches, they get a $50 gift card, or that we throw a branch pizza party? So we had to really kind of figure out a way to what incents people so they don't look at, oh, here's a new product and what's in it for me. This is what you could do that's really cool, and we'll incent you along the way.
So let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about, let's pretend I'm somebody listening to the show and I've got a great idea. I've got a great idea for how to get people to switch accounts or things like that. And where should I begin? Like, where would you give advice to somebody to say, you've got this idea, it seems like something that should have been already figured out. Maybe somebody's already figured it out, but I know this is something I'm really passionate about. Where do you begin? Where do you suggest starting?
I really looked at the IP side right away, because I didn't want to get 6 months down the road and then figure out there was patents or, that something was protected. And so some of the first money I spent was just with a lawyer to do a patent search on what is out there today. And so when we go to build it, how can we build it differently than what's out there today so there's no long-term issues with it? So we did a patent search and there wasn't really anything out there. So that kind of gave me the first green light of, okay, we can make this from scratch and we can build it the way we want to build it. We don't have to get around, anything that's already out there. So the patent search was the very first thing that we did. And then I'm a non-technical founder. And so I had to find technical resources. And so we worked with an outsourced development company and they built the back-end database. And I kind of just explained how I wanted things to work, or here's the idea. And then they came up with like the modules and, the back-end database. And we had to figure out a way to tie in the front-end database to it as well. So it went from IP to very product-focused. Once we got the product out there stable, we actually still work with the same development company we used from the very beginning because they built it from scratch. And so when we're hiring all these developers now, somebody will ask the question, well, why is it written in X, Y, and Z and not A, B, and C? Well, we still have them to lean on. So we still use a couple resources from that development company. And that's just a business decision that we think is the best for us. But I would look at the IP first, because we just live in a world now where it's cheaper to get a patent and you can protect them for a very long time. Process patents are a little bit different because, you could say my process is different than that process just by clicking here instead of there.
Right.
So, but I really wanted to make sure there was no long-term issues by protecting the IP.
The non-technical co-founder is pretty normal. And there's a lot of times where Foundry plays that part of that, just like you were saying, kind of plays that part of that CTO while you're kind of waiting to get that CTO in. But like when you had to like actually make that next move into building that team, did you start top down or did you start bottom up? Did you hire some developers first or did you get that CTO CTO person in place?
So yeah, we had a CTO, and then it was more driven by like the developers. So I was lucky enough to have some really good developers, and to have a good developer is somebody who makes suggestions and just doesn't go with the flow. Like I could say, I want you to do, A, B, and C. And when they come back and say, I think a better flow would be something else, that's what I really appreciate. Not just somebody who goes with the motion and does what they're told, but to challenge things. And that's how you become better, is when developers are challenging you on your decisions. That's when I know that developer really cares about the product they're putting out there. They're not just going with the flow. So it took a few really good developers we had in the beginning that would challenge processes or challenge, concepts and poke holes in it. And when you're poking holes in things, it makes you a lot stronger. I think finding those good couple developers in the very beginning, I wouldn't be where I am today unless we had those good couple developers behind us.
And that type of attitude, I get it. Like, you get some good folks, but the thing is that a culture is created by who you hire. And so when you were hiring these folks, is that specifically what you were looking for? Were you asking them like in the interview, or like, how do you create that space to let people do that?
For sure.
You're the owner,
right?
You're a big scary guy. You could fire me. Like, I'm going to go and tell you your idea is dumb.
It depends on how they, I guess, word it.
If they throw something at you, maybe.
Yeah. But I think it is very entrepreneurial culture at ClickSWITCH. I want everybody to come in and act like it's their own business and care about the product they're putting out there. And a lot of people do. And those who just kind of go with the motions, we're looking for people who challenge us and make sure we are going through the right processes and we are scaling this business to the best of our ability. But there is a way to phrase it. If they say this is stupid, I'm gonna be like, you know what, I think it's good. But if it's all right, I understand where you're going with this, but here's where I would make my changes. That goes a long ways of how you deliver a message to somebody.
Yeah. Well, again, like I used to say all the time, especially when I was coaching other leaders, is if somebody comes to you with a solution, now you know there's a problem.
Yeah.
If they say something is dumb, well, that they don't have a solution.
Yeah.
They're just kind of.
And some people have a problem to every solution, and you got to get rid of those people.
You do. Yeah. Well, and again, they said, I was told once a long time, like, hiring is guessing and firing is knowing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to build like a strong team, because how many folks do you have at ClickSWITCH?
Just over 50.
Yeah. So again, like there's a weird like puberty stage when you go from like 10 to 20, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, we have a receptionist, and like like there's this weird growth thing, and like you said, you've had a lot of people come with you from the beginning. Like, how have you maintained those relationships as the company is scaled? Like, how do you personally try to maintain that sort of? You still want that scrappy feel. Yeah. But you got a lot of people you're responsible for now.
Right. And that's one of my message that I always hit home is I don't want to change what got us here. Like, our mindset can't change. We're still the company that would do anything for our clients. We're going to jump through hoops. If a client wants us to put a button here, we're going to listen to it, and we're going to figure out a way to make every single client happy. That's just our culture. And, a lot of banks will call us and say, we really like you guys because you do listen to us. And we live in a world where there's a lot of big FinTechs that they have their roadmap and they're going to stick to it. And if it's not on there, we'll call you in 6 months. That's just not the way we do things. But in the beginning, we had a lot of just departments of one. And you had somebody in marketing, you had somebody in sales, you had somebody in finance, you had somebody in compliance. And now those departments of one are growing. And I always look around like, do we have the right leadership in place to make sure that we can hire and you can keep those departments growing? And I've been lucky because we do have a lot of people who have grown, like their personalities have grown. Like, I talk to people, I remember having conversations with some of our employees 4 years ago who are still with me. They've completely changed as people, and they've grown. And that's what you have to do. You either got to grow or you got to stay in a department of one.
Right. Those people want to see the impact that they have, right? And I think to your point, it sounds like the culture there are not only being so customer focused, but you're almost celebrating like the customers, right? And you're sharing that information, you're sharing the wins, you're sharing the challenges, right? It isn't something like, well, it's that department,
right?
It's kind of an all hands on deck sort of approach, right?
And I've had to change my approach multiple times. I mean, when I started the company, I was 26. I didn't have a leadership background. I didn't have an MBA. I didn't have any of those things to grow into, like just to make me a CEO out of the bat. I didn't have that. But what I've tried to do is just grow with the business and try to get involved every way I can, whether it's product, whether it's whether it's sales or finance or investors. Typically that's what I'm involved in right now is finance, sales, and investor relationships. But it is like you have to grow with your business. You have to morph with it. And just the way we look at things, and I didn't always look at this. I always looked at from the customer's point of view to begin with, and sometimes that frustrates employees. And so the way I try to look at things now is you put your employees are always number one. You got to keep them happy. And then it's really employees, customers, and then shareholders. I hope no shareholders. No, I'm kidding. But there's a science behind that. If your employees are happy, it trickles down to your customers. And when your customers are performing, your shareholders are happy. So I really just had to reprioritize what are my main objectives to scale this business. And that's just kind of how I look at things.
Yeah, I think the problem that I see with some companies is that it's just kind of lip service for some, is that they're like, employees first and customers second, but it's like the customers reign king.
Right.
And it's hard being a business owner to balance that because you do want your customers to be happy, but ultimately that if they're talking, any customer, even the happy ones, are talking to a pissed off employee, they're going to pick that up pretty quick.
Exactly.
And they're going to get that feeling about this is how ClickSWITCH operates.
Right.
Not just this person. They're never going to think it's just Bill here.
Right. No, and it's we've grown from like 25 employees to over 50 over the last 8 to 10 months.
Yeah.
And every single new hire, I sit down with them and say, this is why I started the company. This is what I believe in. I never want you to a point where you're frustrated. My door is always open. If you have challenges that you're going through, make sure you talk about them. There's just kind of like goes back to the boundaries that we talked about earlier, like to let everybody know you have an open door policy, and when we invest in you as an employee, I don't want turnover. Turnover is expensive. So when you made the decision to work here, and then when we made the decision to hire you, you're with us. You're in the band now.
You're on the team.
Yeah.
You don't have to keep trying out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about the future here of ClickSWITCH and kind of where it's going. So is this something, like you had mentioned the amount of growth just in the past year or 2 years? Do you foresee that again keeping going, or kind of what's your hopes and dreams like for ClickSWITCH, and maybe not 20 years from now, but like the immediate future? Like what are you hoping for?
Well, we're growing at a rapid pace. From Q1 to Q2, we grew 140%, just in transaction volume, revenue, all the good things that people are looking at from the outside. But it's
quality problems.
Yeah. But it's hard to maintain that pace. And so as a new expectation, you're going to grow 140% quarter over quarter. Like that's going to be difficult to do. So what we are trying to do is we got to continue to pump into our pipeline and maximize off of the current clients that are live. I'm always thinking about how can we shorten the sales process? How can we shorten the implementation process? How can we drive revenue faster? And naturally, the deals are getting bigger too. And what's really stimulated our business is there's a lot of up and coming challenger banks that are hitting the market, and we tend to just kind of sit in the middle, and we're gonna play with everyone. If you just started a neobank and you're looking to go after customers, we're going to help you do that. And we're going to help customers get their deposits switched over to you because they open an account with you and they want to get switched to you for whatever reason. And that's just kind of the position we play. There's 6,500 financial institutions in the U.S. and there's up and coming startup challenger banks as well. And we won't rest till we're working with all of them.
That's really cool. So one of the things that I see, and I've been a part of some really fast growing companies before, is that to your point about growing 140% per quarter, how do you view that in your role and your leader's role? Because it almost is like they have to grow at 140% per quarter, right?
Yeah.
How are you, as a leader, helping, coaching? Like, what are some of the things that you do either on a day-to-day basis, week by week, or quarter by quarter basis with your leadership team to like make sure that they're getting the support that they need?
So every Monday, every director of the business I sit down with for 30-minute increments, and they can bring whatever to me. They could say, we could talk about T-ball, or we could talk about something that's going on with the company. It's their time to really talk about it, and I can talk about what are my big initiatives that I want to see as well. So just setting the tone on a Monday, like, what happened last week? What are we focused on this week? Where's client X? We're just so fast paced to make sure a lot of things fail at communication. And we kind of hit that wall, and we were super fast growth, and people needed more of my time. But, I'm out in San Francisco, New York, Texas. I'm all over the place trying to get big deals done and keeping the company going. So I just saw a lot of the challenges we faced was just internal communication, and we can't be the ones shooting ourselves in the foot, right? Yeah. And so me to be more accessible, I think, and sit down and give the time to making sure everything's being taken care of has really helped with that growth. We weren't always growing at 140%. It's just we weren't doing that. But I think we've just changed some things internally in the way we communicate with each other to make sure we're all aligned, we're all on the same page. And if product has decided to scratch this to expedite that was a decision that everybody knew about because we're open in the lines of communication.
I love that you saying kind of that reset mode, right? Because it's something that was really challenging for me as a new leader, as I thought I could just tell these people this once and that was it. And they were adults and it would happen.
Yeah. Then you get a lot of like, didn't I say something like 2 months ago?
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. And so again, like, I think it's important is that, is something else I learned early on is there's no just stating a thing or fixing a thing. It's always grooming. And so what I like what you're talking about is this constant ability to groom the conversation to say, now I've had a week to think about and work on what we just last talked about, and here's the results so far of that, instead of like waiting a quarter or, or waiting for somebody to email you a report on something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, if you need that report, you got to get it right away. You know, there's no waiting around for 2 weeks or whatever it is. We got to move fast, just light speed and get going. Yeah.
And I guess with that pace also comes challenges with everything from space to like all the facilities stuff. Yeah. And how are you, not being a non-technical co-founder? I mean, I don't know what background you might have in facilities management either, but how did you start to learn more about those areas to get to feel more like you could make those decisions?
So when we bootstrapped it, it started in a one-office Regis suite that I just was renting month to month, just so I could escape the house and not have my kids yelling at me. And then we started hiring people, and we're adding some offices in a Regis, and the culture just sucked. It just sucked because, you're sharing a coffee machine with 20 other companies. It just wasn't for us. It was like, all right, we need to change culture, and we need our own space. Mm-hmm. And then we just so happened to find the space on First Ave, and we just moved into the bottom floor of it. And now we're in a position where we've been there just over a year, and we've outgrown it, which is a good problem to have. But we just ran out of places to put desks. And so now we're making our third move, which we're moving into a much bigger space. But you always have the thought, like, is this too big a space? Mm-hmm. Like, am I in too big a space? Mm-hmm. And I thought that when we moved into the First Ave location, this is too big a space. And now we're sitting here like, we don't have any space. So obviously we went in the right direction, but there is they want to lock you, landlords, they want to lock you in 3 to 5 years, and you don't know where your business is going to be in 5 years. Yeah. And if you're bootstrapping it, you don't know where you're going to be in 2 months. Right. And so it's really hard to commit to something very long term. Yeah. And so, we try to look at break clauses and buyout clauses, and that might be a whole new podcast, but just how to negotiate your lease.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. Well, I think that's good. I think that's good advice. You've got to pay attention to that because you can't necessarily predict the future, right? But you also don't want to lock yourself in by building in a cul-de-sac every single time, right? Where now it's like, oh, there's only one way out, you know?
Yeah. We actually got very lucky in the space that we're in now, because when we moved in, it was still bootstrap. I didn't have a ton of cash, and the company that was in there before us was acquired, and they moved out overnight. So every chair, every desk, everything was in there. And so we saved a ton of money just through office furniture and being able to take possession of it.
Talk about a carrot to dangle.
I know.
I will take that. Thank you very much.
Now, we had to set it all up, and we had to deal with all that.
How have you, over the years, in such a fast-paced business, worked to try and find the ability to have time for yourself and family at the same time of like being able to make sure that everybody at work is getting the time they need to?
Yeah.
Like, how is it something you struggle with, or is that something that you think you found some good sort of ropes around?
It depends on who you ask, probably. If you ask my wife, she's probably like, you're not balancing it well enough. But, it's difficult because I'm on the road a lot. And then when I'm on the road and you're detached and you're away from your family, and then you come back and then you have your office who needs you and your family that needs you. Mm-hmm. And so it is very difficult to set, I'm going to be here 8 to 5, but everybody in the office knows that I'm accessible 24/7. I mean, we live in a world where your office line rolls to your cell phone. Right. And like, if I have just the way I'm wired, like some people have the emails that show they have 2,000 unread emails. Yeah. I have 0.
Nice.
Like, it drives me nuts if I look down there and I have an email on there. I got to be checking email 24/7. Mm-hmm. And so I have big time OCD to make sure that, like, everything is being checked, everything's being read, and everything's being followed through. But a lot of it is, I'm here 8 to 5, and then I'm going to go see my kids. They go to bed at 7:30, and I'll pick something up after. Mm-hmm. So you try to create that balance.
Create the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, again, at a fast-growing company, it's like, I know exactly the mindset you're in, Cale, is every email is an opportunity to showing up, and it's like, because you get that early on when it's kind of like this big struggle, and all of a sudden, like we had talked about earlier, this kind of snowball starts to happen, where it's like, now the emails coming in are really positive and not really negative, right? And so I could see why it's like, I want to see how we're winning, and like pick that up because it feels really good, right?
And there was a time where I was kind of, I wouldn't say checked out, but I was just getting frustrated because the company's bootstrapped, and you are getting invoice requests, your phone's being called, and it's really just pound your head against the wall. Like, how do we get through this? How do we get over the hump? Because our revenue is growing, everything's climbing, but you just can't get over the hump there. And taking venture money was one of the best decisions that we could have ever made, and putting just strong people behind your business. Like, we have 2 really multiple behind us, and they believe in what we're doing. And, I'm personally, like, I've never had more fun in the business. I thought it would be fun to start my own business and be on my own and be so just responsible. No, now I'm having the most fun is because we have really good business people behind us. They're opening doors that I could never open by myself, and we're all running at 100% right now.
And plus, they're probably like a board of advisors too, right? Like, you can confide in them and be like, these are challenges I'm not sure how to overcome, and they can point you in those different directions and stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they will challenge me. Like, hey, I think this is the best way to approach this situation, and they'll say, I think it's this way, and this is why. And it's really helpful for me, I was making my own decisions for 3 or 4 years.
Sure.
And now, just to have that, people could take that one or two ways. Like, no, hey, I've done this for 4 years. Let me do it. Yeah. That's not why we chose to raise money. I wanted those people's opinions, and how can I take this business to the next level? Mm-hmm. And so it's been really refreshing for me just to get new insights, new thoughts, and scale this business to how we've been able to do since we took venture money.
Well, Cale, I want to thank you for joining me today. I really appreciated the time. I'm so excited for ClickSWITCH and everything that you're doing over there. I had the pleasure of meeting some of the team. It's fantastic. They're awesome folks.
Thank you.
So if I want to learn more about ClickSWITCH, and like, either maybe I want to come work with Cale because I really loved what he had to say on the show today, or I want to know more about maybe how I can use this technology in my business, where should I go?
So if you go to ClickSWITCH.com, there's an About section. All of our open open positions are on ClickSWITCH.com as well. LinkedIn, we're constantly posting ads looking for the best talent in Minneapolis. But yeah, our phone number's on there. My direct line, it rolls over my cell phone. You should be able to get me. But yeah, all of our open positions are on ClickSWITCH.com. And then as far as product questions go, you can go out there, you can schedule a demo, and when the lead comes in, we assign it to whoever the best demo person is for your territory, and you can jump on and see a product of or demo of our product.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, thanks again, Cale. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Schmidt List. If you want to learn more about how Foundry accelerates innovation, check out foundrymakes.com. And if you'd like me to speak about establishing a growth mindset at your conference or with your team, drop me a note at kurt@foundrymakes.com. Oh, and the next time you're on the internet, head to iTunes and leave the show a review. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, because sharing is caring. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen to the show, and I hope you have a fantastic week.